dried raw. It has 0 artificial preservatives, additives, or fillers. And the best part is it's naturally full of protein, fiber, and omega-3s and doesn't have any junk food ingredients. Dogs love it. The freeze-drying naturally amps up the flavors and creates a delicious texture that even picky dogs love. Right now, I can help you claim 54% off Nature's Blend and get a free pack of premium dog treats. Just go to drmartypets.com/Tom, drmartypets.com/THOM, or text Tom, THOM, to 511-511. Message and data rates may apply. 52 minutes past the hour, picking up your call. Gary in Garfield, New Jersey. Hey, Gary. Thanks for listening on Sirius XM. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. How are you?
Great. What's up?
Long time listener, first time caller.
Well, thank you.
Last week you mentioned Democrats in name only. You mentioned Josh Gottheimer, who's in the district I live in, 5th District, New Jersey. Mm-hmm. Just as a point of reference, that district was Republican since 1930, and he flipped it in 2016. Mm-hmm. So, and he's up to 8 points by the Cook Report now for the next election. So, even though I don't agree with 100% of what he says, and he's part of the problem solvers and everything else, it's still another notch in the Democratic belt rather than having one of the most egregious congressmen that they had in that district, Scott Garrett, for many years. Right. And he basically got rid of him at that point. So
no, I agree that a bad Democrat is better than no Democrat, because the first vote that they take in the House of Representatives, and for that matter in the Senate, is for the leadership. And you know who, right. and you know you want a Democratic Speaker of the House, and that requires a certain number of Democrats. Period. Full stop.
Yeah, right. And like I said, the district had even gone for Trump in 2016, but in 2020, Biden won the district. Yeah. So it's a small crawl, a creep, but at least it's happening, because it is a very gerrymandered district, because it covers the border, the northern border of Jersey, which is pretty much moderate to liberal, but then goes on the west part of it.
Testing.
Yes, I'm here.
Very conservative.
Right.
Okay. Just checking.
Okay.
All right. I get it.
So,
okay. Gary, thanks for the information.
Anytime. Take care, Tom.
Thanks. You too. Darcy in Silver City, New Mexico. Hey, Darcy, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. It's always good to hear your informative and sweet voice.
Thank you.
I was surfing around on the net some months back, and I'm not sure where I was. I think it was a NASA site. And they were saying by the year 2050, 5 billion people in the world, half the world's population, would not have enough water to drink at least 1 month out of the year. And I was wondering if you were familiar with that.
I'm not specifically familiar with that, but I do know that right now, over 1 billion people don't have access to sanitary water or septic, which is pretty mind-boggling. So, it doesn't surprise me.
One of your callers a bit ago said that we have a treaty with Canada that we can't take water out of the Great Lakes. Right. And I am sure that if the poo really hit the fan, this government would break that treaty.
Probably. Yeah, probably.
And if I was a young person, I'd be looking to move up north to a blue state and get myself a rowboat and some 5-gallon jugs.
Yeah. I can tell you, we worry about earthquakes here in Oregon, but and we did have, 3 summers ago that 3 days in a row where it was 116 degrees, but generally speaking, the weather here is quite tolerable. We get a couple of weeks of snow in the winter, and we get a couple of weeks of really hot weather in the summer, but our average temperature is probably in the 60s year round. And I'm grateful for it, given what's going on. Although I was in Michigan over the weekend, I visited my brother and a bunch of old college friends, and Michigan hasn't been whacked too bad. I don't know if it's the Great Lakes or what, but boy, the South and the rest of the country are just getting hammered right now.
Okay, well, I'll look around. Maybe I can get some more information just for I won't be around then, but if that's 2050, it won't be that different in 2040 or 2045.
Well, the problem is going to be the lead up to it. which will involve all the migration, all the climate refugees. Right now, it's just a few 100 million climate refugees in the world. It's going to soon be 1 billion. I predict within this decade. I got to run, Darcy. Thank you for the call. And thank you for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us, and that includes you. So get out there, get active, tag you're it, and consider calling your member of Congress and asking them to ask President Biden to declare a climate emergency. After all, if you got power, why not use it, right? We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself and the people around you, and stay safe.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
Hey, Thom Hartmann here. Why sign up for my program's free daily newsletter over at tom.tv? Well, every morning you'll receive an email with a complete list of the topics we'll be covering on our weekday program. After the show's over, every afternoon, you'll get what I call Sue's Daily Stack that gives you hot links to every single story and information source that we talked about during the show. Plus, every day while the show is live, you can watch it at tom.tv without cost. That podcast of the show, a complete library of every subject discussed on previous shows, a place to view it live. It's all at tom.tv. So why sign up to get all this at no cost? Because we want you to join us to help change the world for the better. Despair is not an option. Sign up now at tom.tv. That's THOM.tv to get all the ammunition you need to win the water cooler wars. Tom.tv. Tag you're it.
Think Theory Radio.
Manipulating the masses is more utilizing propaganda, gaining a wide quadrant of the public, where crowd manipulation is more focused, like the divisionary tactics of these political parties. They utilize certain talking points and phrases to target specific groups that they want to maneuver and empower and get them to do their bidding.
Think Theory Radio with Damian Perdue. Saturdays at 6 p.m. on WCPT 820.
Hey, son, how are you feeling?
I'm fine, Pops.
What's on your mind?
I can't explain it. Navigating without a compass, eyes waiting, started to wonder. Metamorphosis, the loss of who you thought you was.
When your kid can't find the language, help them find the lyrics. Listen to the Sound It Out album and get tips and tools to start a conversation at sounditouttogether.org. Brought to you by Ad Council and Pivotal Ventures.
This is AP News. I'm Rita Foley. Texas is defending what it says is its right to put a floating barrier in the Rio Grande River. The AP's Jackie Quinn.
In a showdown over immigration policies, the Justice Department's filed a lawsuit against the governor of Texas for his refusal to remove a barrier from the Rio Grande River. The lawsuit was coming. The Justice Department told Texas Governor Greg Abbott last
Hey, hon, how are you?
action if he didn't remove it.
I'm great, Santita. How are you? Hey, babe, can I tell my parents what you shared with me?
Yes, of course.
Okay, well, your father should call Dad anyway.
Yes.
You know, but I didn't want to jump the gun on that.
Yeah, no. Y'all ain't gonna tell nobody yet, so it's fine.
Well, you know, yeah, true, true. But I'll be there, and if I'm in town, I'll be there for both services.
112 degrees.
Yes, ma'am. I appreciate you.
No, you know, you got me. Come on.
Climate change for the ballistic.
Facebook sounds good.
Okay, fantastic. So we can hear him.
And deadly hot spells here in the Southwest and Southern Europe could not have happened.
I'm sorry. So we can hear the pastor.
Hungriest people.
Yes, ma'am. He sounds great.
Oh, okay, good. Because I'm having to go from channel to channel to channel. So I just wanted to make sure. Okay. Thank you so much. And okay, well then that's good. That works for me.
The EU ministers met in Brussels for the first time since Russia broke last week on the wartime deal.
Just give me one moment, Pastor. I need to look at something.
Asia is a growing threat. I'm Karen Chamas.
The Biden administration wants new rules to get insurance companies to increase their coverage of mental health treatments. This is AP News. Now to his sentence in the riot at the U.S. Capitol. The AP's Ed Donahue.
A man who beat a police officer with a flagpole.
Well, are you
during the Capitol
excited?
riot was sentenced to over 4 years in prison.
Well, there's a lot going on. You know, it's
There's a
okay.
lot. Yeah, but yeah, there's excitement. I'm more so happy for him that he made the move, and you know, I just want to see how not having this stress of all of that on him impacts his health.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you know, yeah.
Well, you know, I think, you know, watching Dad might have helped him too.
I'm sure.
You know, because it's, you know, this
And-
is not easy, right?
Yeah, it's not easy to walk away from what you've been doing your whole life.
Well, he's not going to walk away from it, right?
Well, he'll still preach.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's not used to not being in charge.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll say it that way.
Oh, you gonna get beaten up. Oh, but it's gonna be great. I'm excited.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, and I'm gonna let you know.
I
I'm
appreciate
gonna
that.
sing at Bobby Lewis's church. I'm gonna put on a little concert there.
I love it.
I know. Can
Just
you
let me know when.
It'll be in September, believe it or not.
Okay. All right.
Can you believe it? I just figured, let me go where the wind is carrying me, you know?
Listen, yes.
Currently, it's 70.
I'm looking forward to that.
Oh boy, it's gonna be a little something, but I just said, let me go on and begin to do this again.
Long-term business relationships with new clients and maintain.
We need to hear your voice.
Oh,
So
wow.
thank you.
Bless your heart, thank you. Lonnie, I just remember how you looked at Kiva. You know, you ever heard her say? I said, this, we're on Facebook, so let's keep it right here. I said, a lot of screaming makes his eyes roll to the back. I told her, I said, honey, screaming makes his eyes roll to the back of his head. Oh, man.
Starbucks is currently denying these accusations.
That is true.
Oh, boy.
Security reasons. However, this is not the first time something like this has happened, as union busting can be traced back to the early 19th century.
Okay,
Union busting is when an employer tries to delay, disband, or prevent a union from forming.
Have you
Despite being
seen
illegal,
Oppenheimer?
It has sadly become common in the workplace.
No, it's on my list.
And you know what
I
I
heard
want
it's very good.
I hear it's excellent, but I want to see Sound of Freedom.
Organization who went on strike to Amazon fired
Okay.
I've
Smith
heard
for trying to create the
incredible things
Amazon
about
labor
that.
union. To the latest case of Starbucks firing employees
Incredible.
for trying to unionize. Union busting was made illegal in 1935 with the National Labor Relations Act. Yet somehow the practices of union busting
And they've
still
been
happening today.
actively
This has
trying
been
to
a WCPT
keep people from watching it.
moment in labor. We are working for your rights.
Gotcha. That means we just gonna have to
Got to
turn
see
our
it.
voice up.
No, yeah, because it's on child sex trafficking.
Have high blood pressure. That's why
Got
it's
it.
important to self-monitor your blood pressure.
And you know,
in
that
4
is a
easy to
real
remember
problem.
steps. It starts with
That's a real thing. Yes, especially in the Black community.
Oh my gosh. Would someone talk about that?
Self-monitoring is power.
Yep.
Visit managerbp.com.
I preached about that at Salem once.
Did you really? How was that received?
I did.
In partnership with the Office of Minority
Very well.
Resources
Okay.
and Services
Because that's for all these missing
they like
children that we
that.
have?
That.
Really?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh,
They didn't
wow.
just run away. No, they were taken.
Okay.
I felt alone.
Okay.
I felt
We need to talk about that, Stephen.
I was
Because
getting
Yes, ma'am.
Chicago's a center for
I didn't
that.
think I
The
was going
Muncies
to
were
the
talking
doctor.
about that
Exactly.
some
With
years
help
ago.
from the Dave Thomas Foundation
That-
for Adoption.
And maybe
Yeah.
because you have everything that
Now
crosses
have a
here in the
forever
United
family.
States.
And the foundation for a bright future.
When I
Yep.
was adopted, it
So-
was like, wow, I get to settle, and this is permanent.
After I was adopted, I felt happy.
Adoption changed me for the better. I feel like I can be whoever I want to be.
Every child deserves a safe, loving, and permanent home. Help the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption find forever families for children who have been lingering in foster care the longest. Learn more at davethomasfoundation.org.
Transitioning from being a Marine to
Sorry, babe. You know I'm always trying to
civilian was
find
very
one or
hard.
two
I
last
lost my
things.
purpose. I lost
Go ahead, handle your business.
that I
Oh,
had.
thank you, babe.
It's a very dark and lonely place to be. It took me surrendering to myself to get the help that I needed. At my very first Wounded Warrior Project event, I met Ray Pizarro. He told me you need to have the courage to forgive yourself for the things you've done in the past. I got it tattooed on my hand. And one night, my depression kept telling me you can end this.
Just needed to
And
write
just before
up
I was
something.
about to pull the trigger, I looked down
Get that
at my
right.
hand, and that's what saved my
But
life.
yeah, but let me know. And
was
do you know?
beginning of
You know what?
my
I'm gonna let me know when we can have lunch
Okay.
or an early dinner.
I'll look at my calendar today.
Yeah, look
Cool.
at that and let me know. 'Cause obviously, we don't want to talk
1 minute.
here. Thank you so much. And let me say hello to the Morning Stars, Pastor. You want to say hello to the Morning Stars?
His family gives him
What's up, everybody?
whether he's helping
Right.
run
I hope you all are doing well.
time at home with his wife and sons. Mark knows he's not fighting
So,
alone.
okay, let me get
For
this
50
right.
years, the Foundation
Okay,
Fighting Blindness
you
has
all.
funded research into treatments
I went
and
through some of my
cures for
stuff because
blinding
I've been
diseases,
getting,
providing
you know, I've
real
been
hope for those
purging.
fighting vision loss.
And I found all
And our
these
nationwide
fabulous
community of
glasses
local
I had that I'd
chapters
forgotten I
provides
had, Stephen. I'm
networking
wearing
and
some
support
some
for
blue velvet
30
ones
seconds.
this morning.
as well as their loved ones.
I love
It
it.
is the best way to fight against blinding
I was
diseases.
like,
I love it.
Fight
oh,
together.
yeah.
And
So,
for
all
Mark,
right,
winning
Alex,
the
let's
fight
have a
against
great
vision
show.
loss means
Thank
being
you
there
so
for his
much.
family. The Foundation
Let's have an awesome show. Yes.
Together,
Excuse me, an
we're
awesome
winning.
show. How about that?
Learn more about how you can help us end blinding disease
10 seconds.
at fightingblindness.org.
Stand by.
WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive talk from TuneIn.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. Oh, yes, we can. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It is a joy to be with you today on Tuesday, July 25th, 2023. Coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Wow, it's great to be with you today. So I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. As we speed through the summer of 2023, we are already in election 2024, but not just the presidential election. We have to look at all of the races past for Stephen Thurston, because because the Republican strategy has been a bottom-up strategy, which is, if you want to make something grow, you got to water the roots, right? Well, they've been able to overtake the state legislatures. And they've also been able to give Republican governors greater power in their picks of justices, Supreme Court justices. Why is that important? All we have to do is look at Alabama, which is what we're going to talk about today. That's one of the issues. Alabama's state Supreme Court, their state legislature, they have decided to override the United States Supreme Court, Pastor Stephen Thurston. Talk about states' rights. Oh, yeah, they said, no, you all rendered a decision, but we're going to overrule you. Yeah, that's right. On racial gerrymandering. Ooh, we got a lot to talk about today on that. And then voting bottom up, everybody. You have an obligation to do that, because it's by voting bottom up, that's how you really elect a president. That is how Donald Trump won. He used a bottom up strategy. He knew, maybe I won't get the majority of votes, but if I get more votes in more places, if that means I'm going to get more electoral votes for the Electoral College, we have to really understand the system. So, as Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman said, it works when you work it. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. What do you think about election 2024? What do you think about it? What do you think about this other indictment that might be down the road, and not too far down the road, for former President Trump? What is it going to look like to have the leading candidate for one of the major parties to be under indictment? And then we shut down the candidates in the Democratic Party because we're not listening. We don't have a debate scheduled for, so we can hear Robert Kennedy and Marion Williamson. We do not let Cornel West, with all of his brilliance, on the stage. Now, how democratic is that? Lowercase d. How does that serve the Republic? Lowercase r. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Let's get to some of these headlines. A national crisis is growing in Israel. Lawmakers voted yesterday to weaken the Supreme Court's power to block government actions. We're going to ask John Nichols about that a little bit later on today, along with just a lot of issues surrounding Israel right now. The measure was pushed through despite months of civil unrest, 29 weeks of protests to be exact, everybody. Protesters say that the proposals threaten one of the only real checks on government power in Israel's fragile political system. They do not have a written constitution, everybody. Did you know that? This week will be the summer's hottest so far over the lower 48 states. Over 250 million people are set to experience heat indexes over 90 degrees. Wow. Temperatures are forecast to be above normal in all regions except the Pacific Northwest. Deadly heat waves in parts of North America and Europe this month would have been virtually impossible without climate change, according to a new study. The Justice Department is suing Texas over its floating barrier on the Rio Grande River. The suit accuses the state of building the barrier without proper authorization. The 1,000-foot chain of buoys is intended to stop migrants from crossing from Mexico. You see how these states are just going past the federal government? It seems like we are in another Civil War moment, everybody. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. It's going to get hot today in Chicago, 87 degrees. It's hazy out there, according to, and according to press reports, it's hazy because of the wildfires. I wonder what's mixed up in those wildfires. What do you think? Call me at 773-763-9278. A haze is all over Chicago. Smoke from more than 1,000 fires burning across Canada is noticeably drifting, and they're here, and it's harming our air quality. Chicago, Minneapolis, Detroit, they're now ranked in the top 20 most polluted cities in the world. Minneapolis, AM 950 radio, please be careful. In Minneapolis, 93 degrees, clear with clouds and haze. Chicago, 87 degrees, clear with lots of haze. In Major League Baseball, the Twins 4, the Mariners 3. The Cubs and the White Sox will be playing in our Crosstown series. Who you got, everybody? North side, south side. Cubs, White Sox. I just love it. In the FIFA World Cup for the women. Tomorrow, the women from the United States will be playing, but in the meantime, Philippines won. They shut out New Zealand. Colombia shut out South Korea, and New Zealand shut out, they didn't shut anyone out. They got shut out by the Philippines. And Brazil 4, a powerhouse, everybody, and Panama 0, Germany 6, Morocco nothing. WNBA, the Aces will be playing the Sky tonight at 6 p.m. Please, everybody, get out there and support these great women athletes. Pastor Stephen Thurston, New Covenant Missionary Baptist Church, it is a joy to have you here today. And of course, at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time every Friday, he is on Facebook Live, really helping us to make the word flesh. I just felt that it was important to say that because we have emotional problems, and that is what the Bible really tries to help you to deal with, all the stuff that we deal with. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Glad to help, glad to serve, glad to empower people's lives.
Amen. So what you got cooking today? What are you going to wrap our knuckles about this morning?
I want to talk to those of us tuned in today that find ourselves constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. Listen, learning to live in the moment is a special gift that's developed in a healthy childhood. That's ideally when we discover simple pleasures like playing with crayons and learning to ride a bicycle or even making friends. But sometimes terrible things happen that twist happiness into something horrible. A parent's rage or a bully's ridicule, bouts of depression or waves of loneliness, they can all shatter a moment's joy to pieces. How can you enjoy being with a friend? Discover what makes you laugh or feel good about yourself when it all just might come crashing down at any given moment. Now, if you tend to worry that something bad will happen if you dare enjoy the right here and the right now, then you're a person who's always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And though it's a sentiment I hear often, let me remind you that you do not have to live life when you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. If you think this way, let me ask you a few questions. Do you have any trauma in your history? Did you grow up in an environment without secure attachment? Did you grow up in a family where one or both of your parents frightened you or were even frightened all the time themselves? Listen, all of these things may be at the root of your worrying behavior. And this chronic state of hyperarousal is really just a coping mechanism that makes sense given one's traumatic upbringing. Now, moving forward, I want you to know today that there is hope. That's the good news. There's hope that you can move forward from this state, from this condition of hyperarousal. These coping skills can be replaced with new skills, healthier skills, one that will serve your bright future, not just your traumatic past. Preparing for disaster, be it a big one or a small one, is something that's common among trauma survivors who regularly feel hypervigilant. Being hyper aware was once a necessary survival mechanism that kept you safe. But it's a coping skill that's probably no longer working in your life. You may not need it anymore, is all I'm trying to get you to see. It may be actually hindering your growth and your healing and your commitment and even your relationships. Listen, again, if you're always anticipating the worst, if you're always double checking with people in your life, if you're constantly asking the people, are you sure? If you're always prepared with the plan B,
Dr. Knighton is on.
E, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. If there's always this thought that things are just gonna go bad, I want you to know that you don't have to live like this, and you don't have to feel like this. Life doesn't have to be this hard. Perhaps you think, hey, it's just a part of who I am now. Guess what? It's not. It's a coping mechanism that you learn. And it can be helped and healed simply by noticing it. Here are 3 important steps you can take towards healing worry, thoughts, and actions that really don't serve you anymore. Number 1, I want you to have an honest and compassionate dialogue with yourself. Yes, I'm giving you permission to talk to yourself. You're not crazy because you talk to yourself and even answer yourself. So have this honest and compassionate dialogue with yourself, because being compassionate with yourself is where the healing begins. Number 2, I want you to begin to experience a secure relationship in therapy. I know we've got some Christians and people of faith that are tuned in, and you may have always been told, well, all you need is God. That's great. I believe in that, but you need God and a therapist. Because there's divine sovereignty, but there's also human responsibility. There's a part that we have to play in the process of our healing. And consistency is a powerful force that can help you heal. And therapy is an excellent place to build a secure relationship. Therapy is a great place to help you to unpack your past. Because again, a lot of what we deal with as adults is really unprocessed pain from our childhood. And sometimes we need someone to navigate us back to that sore spot and then navigate us from that sore spot to our place of healing. And then number 3, have a conversation with your loved ones to help you heal, to build some more secure attachments in your current relationships. Again, I share with you that hope is available. Compassion is available. Healing is available. That's the good news today. And a future filled with pleasant moments without waiting for the other shoe to drop, hey, it's possible for you. I hope you have an amazing day. I hope the cloud that may have been already over you, I hope I just scooted that away, lifted that burden off of you. You're going to go through this day with excitement, with hope, with the spirit of looking towards the future, that the great things are actually going to come, rather than worrying and looking over your shoulder, waiting for the other shoe to drop. That's my time today. Thank you for your time. Have an amazing day.
Thank you for that. That was good news. Lorraine said, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. She needed this word in a special way this morning. So many of us, we nurse the negative and throw away the positive, and it's just not helpful. And I started doing that, I think, in college. I was following some other people close to me, family members. And that's, I see the glasses being half full. So I had to go back to that. I mean, and go back to who I am naturally, which is probably why I'm doing a lot of things now that I actually love doing. And in fact, today, everybody, if you check out my Facebook, I'm going to be posting. Everybody wanted to hear different aspects of the opening service for the Rainbow Push Convention, in which I sang, and so I'm going to post that today. And so I'm very excited about that. 3 p.m. On Facebook Live, you can catch Pastor Stephen Thurston. Hey, you heard him today. This is free therapy. Go on and go get it. I love it. You know what? Always free therapy. It sure is. I'm like, okay. As I'm taking my notes, I sure am. We've got Dr. I love you so much, Pastor Thurston. Thank you so much. We've got Dr. Shanina Knight, and she wanted to talk to us, Pastor Thurston, about sepsis. And first of all, I need you to define it and let us know why it is so dangerous. How do we know when we have it? Because when you get to the hospital and someone's and a patient is diagnosed with sepsis, I know enough to know that that's not a good thing and it's frightening. What is sepsis?
Good morning, Santita.
Good morning.
Okay, making sure you can hear me. So I'm actually getting my exercise in this morning. I'm on my AM walk. So I'm talking, so if I'm a little bit out of breath, then please bear with me. But when we talk about what is sepsis, it is a life-threatening complication of an infection. So typically what will happen is someone will become exposed to some sort of fungus, let's say bacteria, virus, something that, long story short, is hard to treat or goes untreated or unnoticed. It then gets bad to where it then potentially goes into your bloodstream, which makes it very challenging because your cells, which also function within your bloodstream or make up your blood, they can't fight for your body if they are the problem and they're infected. So this infected blood then travels to your organs, major ones. So whether that's your liver, your heart, it can inflame your heart. It can be your kidneys. So different places in which it'll wage an attack. The problem is that your organs then start to fail. Some of them facing irreversible damage. And as a result of that, people end up dying. 80% of sepsis cases, they start outside of hospital settings. People don't even know, let's say, that they are experiencing it. So for some people, sepsis feels like a fever. It's feeling unwell. It's feeling faint. It's feeling weak. It's feeling confused. These are like some of the symptoms that someone may have. They might have muscle pain or feel like, let's say, some breathlessness, like how I'm walking right now, but much, much worse. They could have not, like, let's say, have gone to the bathroom. They may have not urinated for the day. And if they haven't done that, that means that their kidneys, it's an indication that your kidneys aren't functioning. But these are typical things that people ignore. And by the time they actually go in to be treated, sometimes it's too late. Right now, as we are facing an antibiotic crisis, meaning that even though antibiotics exist, there are a lot of multi-drug resistant germs that exist that makes it very hard for us to be able to treat. As a result of being able to not treat those infections with the drugs that currently exist, it means that infections have a risk of getting worse. So right now, what we're running into is that we're starting to see a lot more people with sepsis. And I know I dropped a statistic yesterday that Black people are 300% more likely to have a diagnosis of sepsis, and it goes undiagnosed, and they are less likely to have ICU treatment.
Why?
Because by the time, for one, the symptoms are thought through, by the time they're diagnosed or they have a proper workup for it, it's too late.
You said we, more often than not, contract sepsis outside of the hospital. How do we contract it, and how can we not get it? I've got 2 minutes.
So a plethora of things. So one, having chronic conditions, like let's say congestive heart failure, and let's say diabetes, where you have like, let's say maybe a foot wound that gets infected, or you have something going on where, like, let's say your limbs are swelling. And as a result of that swelling, let's say your kidneys are not properly treated, so you're not filtering out sugar. Then what can happen is you can have a UTI that goes untreated, goes undiagnosed, and then that's transferred over into your bloodstream. And when I say UTI, I'm talking about a urinary tract infection. With that diabetes wound could have got infected, and because you have, let's say, neuropathy and did not notice, that then can then cause that infection to go into your bloodstream. So what I'm expressing, Santita, is the fact that this is the health disparity, or the complications of the health disparities that's experienced amongst the Black community, the reason why they would be more prone to come infected. The other piece of it is that I know that I've talked about is this whole notion around hygiene poverty. So living in deplorable conditions, not having proper environmental cleaning, proper body cleaning, these are also things that increases the risk for infection. And remember, as I mentioned, sepsis is the life-threatening complications of an infection going untreated.
You know, and tomorrow I'm going to ask you about dental health too, because sometimes we let those issues go too far.
That's very important.
Very important. Dr. Knighton, hey, Dr. Nina, HEYDRNINA, everybody. Please get yourself together. And we're going to ask her not just about washing hands, but how we should clean our bodies. And particularly if you're susceptible to wounds, people who have diabetes and things like that. Got a lot to talk about. Back with more. The Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. What's going on in Alabama? Alabama has defied the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. You know, before you go, very quickly, I was talking to a young lady who it surprised me. She was at the dentist yesterday, and she said, "Oh, I've had a toothache. And now, you know, one side of my face is swollen. They've given me an antibiotic." I said, "Ooh, wee." I said, "Now that means you have an infection in your head. Did they tell you to, like, you know, use Listerine or Dr. Tishner's or hydrogen peroxide, you know, just try and something, you know, not something just to try and clean out your mouth." Not that she's not clean, because people can become offended by that. Because that's not what it meant. It was like, wait a minute, I wouldn't just get an antibiotic. That's just me, you know. But I was raised. My great grandmother helped to raise me. She would have been well north of 100 years of age. So when I look back on it, I was raised by more than 100 years worth of old remedies and knowledge, right? Where they use poultices and things like that to help get you well, and they worked. So what about a dental infection? Just very quickly before you go.
So those can also too be deadly. And just to your point, Santita, they run the risk of coming in contact with, like, they're in your head. So we're now talking about the probability of brain. We're also of being impacted. We're also talking about the fact that if, let's say, somebody aspirates, and when I say aspirate, that's like literally having some water go down the wrong pipe, right? So imagine you having that infection in your mouth, and you then aspirate or have some water go down the wrong pipe. Then, long story short, your lungs are now exposed to that bacteria that was in the abscess that's in your mouth. So it's very
Attorney Jones and Reverend Yuri are on.
infection because of how many places that dental infection can actually travel to. So it's a very, very, very scary thing for individuals to have, and something that should not be looked over.
Is there
or
anything
taken too lightly.
Well, is there anything she should do in addition to taking the amoxicillin? Because I mean, I wouldn't be able to rest. I would use
I would hope
peroxide or Listerine, Dr. Tishner's. I would
I would hope
letting it
that
sit
they
on
would
it.
have.
Yeah.
Would have hoped that they would have given her maybe like some chlorhexidine gluconate.
They didn't.
So it's CHG or like a HEPA cleanse, and so they have mouthwashes, and those mouthwashes typically would help to ward off like some of those germs that can be growing inside of the mouth. And so typically I see individuals be prescribed that.
She wasn't. I will speak with her about that today, which is why I
so
recommended,
that's typically
cleaning out her mouth. I said, you can't just let this sit there.
Yeah, no, that's something that'll absolutely help. I'm laughing because, that was one of the things that even during like the height of COVID and just
1 minute.
places, was in my to-do or my go-to was having some CHG. So that chlorhexidine gluconate is heavily used by the dental community for that reason of being able to kill harmful germs that are in the mouth. And so that would be my suggestion. So again, I am not her professional or a licensed professional in that regard to make a diagnosis or an order, but would say as a recommendation.
30 seconds, and you have a new caller. I'll send you the information now.
Chlorhexidine gluconate mouthwash.
Well, I thought so. I told her, I said, you got to get that cleaned out. I said it.
Exactly.
I said, you got to clean this out, honey. This is not something you can just
but
let
I'm
sit
cutting,
there.
I'm cutting out, Santita.
10 seconds.
I'll tell you about my research tomorrow, but I'm headed to a research meeting. So I
stand by.
Soon,
All right.
Santita and friends.
All right. Sending you much love.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. And welcome to WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio. Everybody, we are in the midst of the election 2024 season. Everyone's looking at the presidential contest, and you should, but you need to look down ballot. We're going to be talking with Texas Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis, along with Attorney Darrell Jones and Reverend Dr. Todd Yuri Esquire about that, because that's very, very important. But we also need to talk about what happened in Alabama, what's happening in Alabama. Let's talk about that, because we're watching states' rights writ large. States more and more are defying the orders of the federal government. So what do you think about that? Because now Kay Ivey, who is the governor of Alabama, well, voters in Alabama, they were surprised this year when two conservative members of the majority, it's a conservative Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, well, they joined three of the liberal justices, and they said, Alabama, you need to have congressional districts that reflect the Black population. Well, now Kay Ivey and the state legislature have said, no, we don't need to do that. Basically gone past the U.S. Supreme Court. Reverend Dr. Todd Yuri, part of the leadership team at the Rainbow Push Coalition, senior pastor at the Douglas Memorial Community Church in Baltimore, Maryland, and one of the leading advocates for the vote in the United States today. Of course, he'll be on the radio later on WOL in Washington, D.C. You can catch it everywhere at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. Let me start with you, Attorney Darrell Jones, the chair of the Transformative Justice Coalition. What is going on in Alabama, and why should we be concerned about it in Chicago, in Baltimore, in Washington, in Montana?
all over the country, we should be concerned, Santita, about what's happening in Alabama. Because what has happened is that Evan Milligan, was the plaintiff in the case and originally brought an action against the state of Alabama because Alabama has about a 27% African-American population, but the legislature there had redistricted the map such that the black population would only be able to elect one black congressional representative, and diluted the balance of the black vote that was there such that it would be difficult for them to elect anyone else other than the one black. Well, Evan Milligan brought a suit against them saying, this is disproportionate just based on the percentage of blacks that are in Alabama, that there should be.
You have 2 callers total.
Congressional representatives at a minimum, and was successful. It went before the U.S. District Court and before two out of the 3 U.S. Circuit Court judges that were appointed by Trump that said that Evan Milligan was right. Went up to the U.S. Supreme Court that Evan Milligan is right, that Alabama deserves at least 2 majority black districts in Alabama. It went back to Alabama after being passed and decided by the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Alabama state legislature said, "No, we're not going to do it. We're not going to listen to what the Supreme Court has said. We know our people better than you know our people, U.S. Supreme Court. We ain't listening to you." And they went and they again redistricted Alabama and gave them 1 majority black district, and then another district where they said, "We'll do 40%, but we ain't going to give you a majority."
Stop. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a layperson. How does that work? How do you disobey the U.S. Supreme Court? How does that work? How do you do that? Help me.
Well, I mean, that's an excellent. Well, it really comes down to us respecting, in the U.S. respecting the decisions of the U.S. Supreme Court. So the question becomes, when a state decides to not follow what the Supreme Court of the country has said,
first caller hung up,
the ramification. What do you do? Do you send down the U.S. Marshals to enforce it? I mean, what exactly do you do? And that's the predicament that we find ourselves in now. And it's really interesting because it would be somewhat similar to what you see happening in Israel right now with regards to system there being taken over by the legislature, right, by the executive branch of government.
So
there.
that's what's happening there.
It's very right, and it's somewhat similar to Alabama because if we allow the legislature to say, we're not going to listen to the courts, we're not going to listen to what the U.S. Supreme Court has said, this is what we are going to do. That's the scary situation that has now been teed up in the state of Alabama. And the question is, what will now happen? It's not Alabama's first time in this rodeo. They have been known to not follow what the court dictates. So it's going to be interesting to see the response of the federal government to Alabama's thumbing its nose at the U.S. Supreme Court and telling them to follow and obey the Constitution and the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
I feel like this is a civil war. I mean, these are the same people who broke away from the United States. They said, "I'm done." Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary, unbelievable. I mean, at least for me, that my reading of it, just as a layperson, was, wait a minute, you have turned your back on the U.S. Supreme Court. What else will you do? Talk to me about Alabama.
Well, good morning, Santita, and to my colleagues. This kind of defiance would get you just a straight up whipping in the house I grew up in, right? Defying. Somebody needs to tell Alabama, go get a switch off that tree and come back here, because you obviously don't understand what this is. It is literally that basic, that if you have a directive, there's a difference between a majority district and a plurality district, right? Just having having more than any other group, but no one having a majority is not the same as having a clear majority, whereby a group can then have a better chance to have and elect representation consistent with what their needs are, what their identity might be, that kind of thing, right? So Alabama's thumbing its nose. This is really a test. Remember, what we've seen over the last several years is that this nationalistic conservatism has started to use the courts as a bludgeon. And when they get the rulings that they want, it's fine. When they don't get the rulings they want, they test, they defy, and they further entrench around this notion that they can just do this incremental implementation of these rules. Now, let me remind you, the last time we saw something like this was actually after Brown versus Board. Many times we talk about Brown versus Board as if it is a thing. There's Brown 1 and there's Brown 2. The reason there was a second Brown versus Board of Education is there was this intentional dragging of the feet to implement the intent of what the Supreme Court had ordered in Brown versus Board of Education 1, the original case that was litigated on the merits.
Well, because wasn't it supposed to be, just because I want to make sure that I'm following this correctly. I'm sure other people have this question too, because wasn't it to be implemented with what? All deliberate speed?
All deliberate speed. That is the language in the ruling. All deliberate speed. No delay, no hesitation, no obfuscation. Make it happen. Implement the expectation and the directive is laid out in the court's ruling. Here, Alabama has taken it upon itself to say, obviously that's not what the Supreme Court meant, and so we're able to do one and almost do the other, and get credit for turning in all of our homework as if we've completed the assignment. The truth of the matter is that's not the case. But what it really shows, and this is what we have to highlight, is that the resistance to the voting rights, the voting impact of Black and brown voters across the country is an intentional act. You can't pretend now that this is just kind of accidental and a byproduct of the process. They knew what was expected. They did something counter to what was expected, and they dug in. They decided that we will not be forced to do what we don't want to do, so we're going to make you, Supreme Court, come back and address this again. And I will leave this. Remember which of the justices has the circuit that the state of Alabama is in under his purview. So any emergency reviews, any issues for stays from the Supreme Court go through the justice where the circuit is that issue arises. Clarence Thomas is the justice that has that circuit that Alabama falls in. So when we look, and he's one that was certainly not with the others who voted with the liberal bloc in challenging Alabama. He would have left it as it is. So let's be real clear on what this is. This isn't by accident. This is intentional, and it is to force a resistance to rulings that states don't like, even if those rulings come from a conservative Supreme Court.
Well, please explain to the listeners why that is important. And I'm saying that many people feel that once you're sworn into the Supreme Court, that's all you do. You just oversee those cases, and you point out that no, they have purview over districts all over the country. Please explain. Reverend Dr. Yeary?
I should have hit the mute again. Each state at the trial court level has a district, a number of districts. That's where they hear cases, they argue. Those are the trial courts. Each state falls within a circuit. That's a network of states that there's an appellate court that oversees disputes that are not resolved at the trial level or resolved against one interest versus the other. Above the circuits comes the Supreme Court. There are 9 justices. Each of the 9 justices have certain responsibilities for certain circuits, so that if there are emergency disputes that come up within the circuits, that justice gives an original response to whatever that emergency issue is. So when we've seen issues where there were impositions, most recently on women's reproductive rights, you would see sometimes an order of a stay or an injunction to keep the states from being able to move. That is the method, that's the framework that allows for judicial oversight and accountability so that you don't have arbitrary implementation of laws in its best form. And when you don't have the crazies running loose, you actually get some sense that there's accountability. And it worked, actually, and we were able to leverage it precisely during the periods of the test cases, what we would call the civil rights era, when we were taking challenges, particularly around separate but equal and violations of the 14th Amendment, to the federal courts. Now what you have is this nudge, nudge, wink, wink. We'll say it, but we're not going to enforce it. This is really for the Supreme Court to determine, will it become the next victim of this nationalistic conservatism, similar to what we're seeing across the world, or will it further express its authority as the Supreme Court constitutionally established to make sure that states are held accountable to the rulings of the court? If they get by with this, there will be other rulings coming down the line, from everything from other variations of affirmative action to women's reproductive health to interracial marriage to LGBTQIA plus rights. You will begin to see this testing of whatever might come down from the Supreme Court if there's a ruling that a particular state doesn't like, particularly if that state has a justice that seems to align with their conservative nationalistic ideals.
Mhm. Attorney Darrell Jones, what did the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, say was wrong with the maps is wrong with the maps in Alabama? And how did they want to see that changed? I mean, because I think everyone was surprised when you had these two conservative justices who joined the liberal voting bloc. I mean, it was just a surprise, but Gorsuch has surprised me with his rulings, supporting indigenous people. So, I mean, hey, you can't nail everything. I mean, you can't just say anything with absolute certainty, because you just don't quite know where people are going to go. I mean, after all, Brown versus Board of Education, that was under conservative court. And I mean, here we are. But talk to me about Alabama. What happened there?
Santita, can you imagine how egregious the racism in the drawing of the maps must be for Federalist Society Supreme Court justices to side with the progressive or liberal members of the court to say, Alabama, what y'all did to the black population there is wrong? It's got to be truly egregious. What happens in Alabama is that, when you have a little greater than a quarter of the population that is black, and they would be entitled, just by the numbers, to a minimum of 2 majority black districts in Congress. And then you had happen that the state legislature, which is the entity that draws the lines to determine the congressional districts, says, no, we're not going to give you 2 black majority districts. We're only going to give you 1. And in addition to that, that's it. We're going to pack, that is to, take the black populations that are in various counties and townships throughout the Black Belt, and we're going to break them apart so that they cannot have a majority black district and a second member of Congress. That, in essence, is what the state legislature did. And the black population there, of course, there was nothing they could do about it once it went to the state legislature. The scary part all of this is that, what we saw happen was that, and similar with Florida, what we're seeing happening is that once those decisions are made and those congressional districts are drawn, it'll last for a minimum of 10 years. But even when they challenged it in the court, because it takes a while to go through the court system, elections are held with these types of districts that are drawn. And that's what happened in Florida, that the Supreme Court refused, as Reverend Urey was saying, the Supreme Court refused to make any decisions early in the Alabama case that would have allowed them to speed it up, because they were in the middle of coming up on an election season, and their congressional lines and district lines were going to be determined based on what the state legislature had done. So you ended up having elections in 2 states, a minimum of 2 states, Alabama and Florida, that had these awkwardly drawn lines that were subsequently found unconstitutional. So the question then becomes, you have members of Congress that are being elected from what should have been a majority black district, but is not, and you end up with a white representative. And the question becomes, are they actually legitimately elected if, in fact, the district that's been drawn is an illegal district. And so it creates all kinds of issues and all kinds of problems. So, where we stand now is that it really lifts up the importance of why voting down ballot, as we call it, is important. That is, voting for state representatives. All of that becomes extremely important because it's those state representatives that make the determinations as to where these geographical lines are drawn for congressional districts. So, that's part of the reason we talk about the importance of down ballot voting, voting for the judges in the state court, voting for, all of those positions become extremely important because it's those judges in the state court that will sit and listen to those cases as well.
Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT, because I think this is important for us to look at, because I don't want us to get to October of 2024 or, post-convention 2024 and look at this, because we have the power to do something right now. Attorney Jones, and then you, Attorney Erie, which Reverend Erie. Ecclesiastical titles eclipse all others, with all due respect. So, talk to me. What could, if this be rectified before the 2024 election? Can Black people get their due in Alabama, Attorney Jones? You only have she's an attorney too, Terry Sewell. That's it. With all those Black folks in Alabama. And quite frankly, I feel this way if it were Latino people, if it were Indigenous people. People need representation. They're not getting that. It's just that simple, Attorney Darrell Jones.
And you're right on it, Santita. One of the things that the movement has done successfully is weaponize what we call the stay. And what the stay is that when there's a challenge to the state legislature, to the state districts that are drawn, that is brought, and it goes up to a federal court for challenging. What the judge can decide is that they can say, these districts are horribly drawn. It's clearly racist. It's clearly, taking advantage and taking away the power of the minority voting power. They're not getting a chance to elect a representative of their choosing. However, I'm going to put a stay on this. I'm going to put a pin in this. We're going to hold this while it goes up on appeal for consideration as to what I see and what I've decided as the judge is correct. Now, the net effect of that is that the districts that have been drawn, that that the judge pretty much is indicating are unconstitutional or violative of the rights of the individuals, it remains in effect. So you're going to be holding elections based on something that the judge believes is wrong. And that's what we call the weaponization of that stay, of saying we're going to put a stop, we're not going to do anything with regards to what they've done. We're going to let a higher court review it. And while they're reviewing it, everything that the state legislature has done in Alabama, we're going to leave in place. That's the big concern. That it's just really just a weaponization of the court system to achieve what the Alabama state legislature is after. And so that's a big concern. That's why we continue to push and talk about the importance of having representatives in the state legislature that are pushing for the community's interests. They're pushing for really an inclusive democracy, because what this is, it's in my estimation, it's against the inclusive multiracial democracy. That's precisely what Alabama is laying out in this type of situation, Santita.
Absolutely. What will you and Barbara Arnwine, what will you all be talking about today on your show on WOL that comes on at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time today?
Well, today, Santita, we're going to be talking about Florida. Florida as well is wrapped up in a lot of this Alabama stuff with regards to redistricting as well. Our focus right now is going to be on this, on the movement by Governor DeSantis, talking about how Blacks benefited from enslavement and the skills, and that, it's going to be just an incredible conversation. We have two representatives out of Florida that are going to be joining us in the conversation. State Senator Chevron Jones. So it's going to be, really a fact-filled and learning, information-filled segment.
Well, you do not have a fact-free zone. Reverend Dr. Todd Geary, I mean, this leads us into the topic that you were introducing earlier in this segment, voting down ballot. Why is it important? As we bring on, joining you in the next segment will be Texas Harris County Commissioner, Rodney Ellis. I mean, this lets you know how important it is to vote all the way up. I mean, I know your eyes roll in the back of your head when you see all these judges, but they make a difference, Reverend Dr. Geary.
They do make a difference. And in the next segment, when Brother Rodney Harris gets on, you'll understand why. A county commissioner has as much impact on your local reality than sometimes your state legislators do. And so it's important that we understand how government works, why we have to engage in the electoral process, and how we must be persistent in our demands that our agenda and our interests be advanced, whether it's at the local, state, or federal level.
Well, stay right here. We're joining Reverend Dr. Todd Geary, Esquire, and Attorney Daryl Jones will be Texas Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis. They have their own issues down there. I mean, look at how they're treating the migrants. This is awful. I mean, and these states, like the great state of Texas, who they say they're sovereign, they really are a country, they're defying the U.S. Supreme Court. Do you know what that means, everybody? It's like we're in a Civil War moment. Well, Benjamin Franklin was told. I mean, he said to this woman who asked, what kind of government you've given us? He said, a republic, if you can keep it. It's a fragile thing. It's very strong, but it's fragile. That's why you got to get registered to vote. You've got to get involved. It works. This government works when you work it. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, the Santita Jackson Show. Check out Attorney Daryl Jones and Attorney Barbara Arnwine on WLOL this today at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, 11 o'clock our time, Central Time. And of course, joining Reverend Dr. Geary and Attorney Daryl Jones, Rodney Ellis, in just a few minutes on the Santita Jackson Show. Wow, you guys, these states, they are not playing with the federal government. Don't tread on me. All of that. This is a deep thing. Or do you think I'm exaggerating?
No, you're not exaggerating. Let me give you what it is. So,
are you gonna get your popcorn now?
You know. No, well, yeah. Look, the way they acted, I may need a tonic. This one may require something with a little strength to it. So it's like sitting down playing cards. I love playing bid whist, right? You sit down, you play bid. Sometimes sometimes you play with a kitty, sometimes you don't. So imagine you playing with a kitty, and you take the bid. So you win the opportunity to set the bid and to look in the kitty, but somebody else, the dealer, gets to preempt your looking in the kitty and tell you that instead of you having a definite 2, they're gonna make you play with 1 and a possible.
No, baby, now you know
the commissioner's phone goes straight to voicemail, and you still have Joe holding.
Oh, you know how to play cards.
So spades players.
No.
What did you do at Howard? You were a student. I was down there.
No, wait a minute. Hold on. My friends and I had a great time. We just didn't play cards.
We had a great time. Y'all were in the library and doing all that stuff. That's why my mama was mad at me.
But we went to the movies. We went shopping.
all of that stuff. I was at the card table. You know.
But you're a guy. But my girlfriends and I, we went shopping. But you know, I mean, and you know, and we, you know what? I will tell you this. One of the great things that I got from being I think just being in college, period. But when you're at a black school, you have a larger pool. Sometimes you'd be on your way to the movies and you would get caught in some big conversation that was political in the dormitory, and you'd look up and it was like, I missed the movie, right?
Oh yeah.
Those things would happen, right? A lot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what happened. And plus,
but imagine you're supposed to be given a better hand to play.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
And Lorraine joined me. Wait a minute. Lorraine said, I've never played either. Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you.
What else? Look, just put it on the list of things to do. One day we're gonna sit down at the table. I'm gonna bring a fresh deck of cards. We're gonna learn.
Okay.
We're gonna learn.
Okay, no,
but look,
okay.
Right. So if I am supposed to deal you a fair hand,
okay.
And as the dealer, I change my mind and say, I'm not going to abide by what is now the rule. I literally, in the words of Reverend Jackson, changed the game.
The commissioner's on. He says he has 30 minutes.
If the rules are fair, the playing field is level, the referees, if the rules are clear, the playing field's level, the referees are fair, and the score is transparent, we can win. That's the whole issue. They changed the dynamic of the game, and they did it intentionally, even though the Supreme Court has said, these are the rules that you must abide by. And they've said, we don't like these rules. We're going to make up our own rules, which is the exact dictionary definition of what structural inequality, structural racism, structural inequity looks like. The arbitrary misapplication of rules that should promote fairness and opportunity. Somebody decides that they're going to do what they want to do simply because they can.
We welcome Texas Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis to the show. Rodney Ellis, Commissioner Ellis, you have got Reverend Dr. Todd Geary and Attorney Darrell Jones on with you.
Three great minds of reason. I was listening to a podcast this morning where in Israel, the right-wing governing coalition is also stacking their Supreme Court. And then you look at what's happening in states around the country. We're in for some real challenging times. And I was listening to a great book, Before Brown, over the holiday weekend, over 4th of July weekend. And it's amazing what the courts did to give us so many of our rights. And now all of those issues are being eroded, and so quickly right in front of our eyes. I saw that article you sent me, Santita, about that well-funded group going around the country taking over state Supreme Courts. It happened in Texas a long time ago, even before all of the statewide elected officials were Republicans. And they don't just look for people by party affiliation. They want far-right, ultra-conservatives. And as that article that you sent me said, it's a lot cheaper and easier for them. They look at this efficiency to put up the money, go take over the Supreme Court. And the most challenging thing of all is that Supreme Court decision where you cannot limit money. So that means you have this dark money that goes in, and it's virtually impossible to fight it. They say, watch out. They'll go after mayoral seats. They're taking over school boards. They'll step in these nonpartisan races, and they'll even find people who look like folks from various communities that they can give enough money to or that they own who will act even crazier than folks who are not part of that community.
Well,
that was the Harvard and UNC case, the part that Rodney just mentioned.
1 minute.
And they went and got some students that you normally wouldn't expect to be in that fight to be the proxy for what was really an argument over white access, white interests. So they create this hierarchy of racial entitlement, but at the top of the hierarchy is still white privilege. And that's how they manipulate this process, well funded by conservative funders, to have litigation pools, just money, to create these test cases in favorable circuits around
30 seconds
so that they can get a case before the U.S. Supreme Court.
Stand by. We're coming up. Ooh. And this is going to be a fast-moving segment. We're going to have John Nichols at the bottom, I guess, talking about Israel too, and the SAG-AFTRA strike.
10 seconds.
Everything's happening at one time. Stand by, everybody.
Stand by.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. Oh, yes, we can. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
To a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children. can't wait. Let's change the world. I am
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Just go on over there, everybody. Everybody says the sound is better over there, too. Hey, Laura. Get on over there, girly girl. Call me at 773-763-9278. Jewel, I'm going to get to you, my girl up there in New York. 773-763-9278. Let's talk about the importance of voting and the importance of voting down ballot. Everywhere there is a box to be checked, check, everybody, because this is real stuff that we're looking at. We are in the midst of the 2024 election season. Don't just focus on the presidency. That's important. But these people impact how you live. And Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary, you rightly pointed out that the gentleman who is joining our panel, who's part of the family of the show, he directly impacts the lives of people more so than the president, more so than your federal representatives, the county commissioners. They control the budgets that go to the cities and on and on and on. So we're going to talk with him about the importance of voting down ballot and the importance of voting. So let's get to some of these headlines, everybody. A national crisis is growing in Israel. We'll be talking with John Nichols about that, among other things, at the bottom of the hour. Lawmakers voted yesterday to weaken the Supreme Court's power to block government actions. The measure was pushed through despite months of civil unrest. They've had 29 weeks of protest in the streets. Protesters say the proposals threaten one of the only real checks on government power in Israel's fragile political system. Over 250 million people are set to experience heat indexes over 90 degrees in the lower 48, everybody. Temperatures are forecast to be above normal in all regions except the Pacific Northwest. What's happening in Texas? You're going to have to let us know, Texas Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis. The Justice Department is suing Texas over its floating barrier on the Rio Grande. The suit accuses the state of building the barrier without proper authorization. It's a 1,000-foot chain of buoys. Wow, what is going on in Texas? IRS agents will no longer knock on taxpayers' doors unannounced. IRS agents knock on tens of thousands of doors each year. That will be reduced to hundreds only in unusual circumstances, everybody. And of course, today we have got the Emmett Till monument that will, the president is looking at bringing that to our attention, everybody. Emmett Till and Mamie Till Mobley. That has been established by President Biden. There will be a new national monument honoring those two heroes. The monument will be centered in Illinois and Mississippi, the states where Till was from. He was from here in Chicago, and the state where he was killed in Monee, Mississippi. The designation will come amid a national debate over how to teach painful facts about American history. And those are just some of the headlines. In Chicago, we've got the airport. We are among the 20 most polluted cities in the world, everybody. That's right, Chicago, Minneapolis. We are among, we have the worst air quality, everybody. So when you look outside and see the sun, the clear sky, you see a haze. It's pollution, everybody. It's the 1,000 wildfires that we are getting the blowback from, if you will, from Canada. In Chicago, we'll have a high, though, of 87 degrees. It will be clear and hazy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 93 degrees, clear, clouds, and haze from that smoke. The Twins in Major League Baseball. The Twins 4, the Mariners 3, the Cubs, and the White Sox will be having our crosstown series. Who you got, north side, south side? We will see tomorrow. They're going to play tonight at 7 p.m. The World Cup. The women of the United States aiming to have a three-peat. No male or female team has ever done that before, but they play tomorrow. In the meantime, the Philippines 1, New Zealand 0, Colombia 2, South Korea 0. New Zealand was shut out by the Philippines. Can you believe it, everybody? Brazil shut out Panama. Huge, strong team. Germany 6. Morocco, nothing. And the A's will be playing the Sky tonight at 6 p.m. Everybody, we're looking for financial freedom. We need it. We need it. We need it. If you are a first-time home buyer, if you owned a home 4 years ago, but have not owned one within the past 3 years, this program could be for you. 5 years ago, you could have owned a home before, but as long as you have not owned a home over the past 3 years, this program might work for you, and you need to reach out to Team Hochberg at 855-56-DAVID. call them or go to 56david.com. But I think you should call them because you might have other questions about saving your home or buying a home, and they will answer your questions for you. They're concerned because only 26% of first-time home buyers last year they made up the marketplace. Americans more and more are not buying our homes. Why? We can't afford it. We can't figure out how to get our credit right, and on and on and on. So guess what? Those numbers are down. They continue to drop. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac want to move these numbers around. They want more and more Americans to be able to have a home. Indeed, that is the cornerstone of Americans' wealth. And they now have substantially lower rates. These rates can be raised at any time. So what you need to do is take advantage of this program now. But call Team Hochberg and see if you are eligible. If your total household income is below $105,700, you just might have a chance. And you've not owned a home within the past 3 years, this program might just be for you. So call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or go to 56david.com. Multi-generational wealth is within your grasp, everybody. Homeowners beget more homeowners, and on and on and on. The generations pass that on. But you got to get in the mix. Everybody, I want to hear from you. What about Republicans who have been flipping these state legislatures? They have been able to do it because they have been voting. Guess what? Down ballot, everybody. They vote. In less than a decade, Republican politicians in 8 states have transformed their state Supreme Courts, pushing centered courts to the right. In North Carolina and Ohio, the judicial election system is partisan. In Arizona and Georgia, they've expanded the number of justices. In Iowa and in Idaho and Utah, the Republican governors have been given much more power to shape the court, to select their justices. What does that mean? And what about voting down ballot? Joining Reverend Dr. Todd Geary, Esquire, and Attorney Darrell Jones, who will be on WOL today at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, along with Attorney Barbara Arnwine. We have got Texas Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis. You know, I'm struck by the fact that you were State Senator Rodney Ellis, one of those powerful persons, black or white or brown or yellow or red, in all of state government. And so when you went to become the commissioner of Texas Harris County, which houses Houston, which is about to overtake Chicago as the 3rd most populous city in the country, I said, I wonder what is he doing? I said, but Rodney Ellis knows, so help us to understand the importance of voting down ballot.
Well, you know, when most people go in to vote, they think about the White House. They think about the governor's mansion. They may think about a U.S. Senate seat where it gets more attention. And all of those are important. But those items down at the bottom of the ballot are equally as important. You know, you think about a mayor's race, but a mayor is only as powerful as having a city council that they can work with. Most folks don't really pay attention to county government. It's usually, in my case, in Texas, we have the longest ballot in the country. Houston, Harris County is about 5 million people. City's about 2.5, and 2.4 million. County slightly larger, some other cities there. But county governments control our public health system, to a great extent the mental health system. They do housing, they do flooding, a host of issues. It depends on the county. But it's so important. The largest county in the country is L.A. County, by the way. But look, every race matters. You know, you see how Republicans, right-wingers in particular, are taking over some offices that really had very little to do with much of anything. They take over local school boards that write the curriculum, by the way. So you got to vote in every race. And then when we did begin to vote more and more, then they decided to go and start changing the rules to make it more difficult to vote, make it more cumbersome, make it harder to register. But no matter how tough it is, we got to live through this period. I'm just heartbroken we no longer have federal voting rights protections because that did so much to stop this patchwork all around the country of different rules and games and schemes that make it harder for people to vote. Well, we're in that era now. When divided up in Washington.
Well, please explain.
So it'll take a while.
How did losing that federal protection, how has that harmed us?
Oh God, that means that in so many ways, each state is left to their own ingenuity, their own devices to do virtually anything, and they are doing it, coming up with the most creative schemes you can think of, and fairly blatant about it. They're not hiding it. They don't want everybody to vote. You know, part of our effort, Rep. Jackson's effort to struggle over the years, was to help everybody participate in this democracy. But you got a crowd in control now. No, they don't want that. They want certain people to vote. They want the property owning class to vote. They want people to vote who agree with them. I want everybody to vote. Even if they want to vote against me, that's your right. I want to facilitate making it as easy for you to do that as possible. But unfortunately, that's not what most people believe.
It seems that Republicans are training from the grassroots on up the importance of being on the school board. They run people for the school board, for the police boards now, because I had never heard of that before. I mean, county government, they're running for all of the, if you will, unsexy seats that really control how we live. What can we do to?
It develops a bench.
Okay.
It develops a bench. And we got to get people who are running for the school board, for the community college board, for the water sewer board, so they are prepared. Everybody just can't wake up and decide they want to be a United States senator and think never having held public office that you could just go to the U.S. Senate. Usually you got to pay some dues. I mean, it's cumbersome. It takes time, but they have a much deeper bench on the Republican side than we have on the Democratic side. And as you said, they go after these nonpartisan positions, and they will get people who look like me and you.
But you know what?
Sing a conservative song and finance them.
Commissioner, they start on the college campuses too. And I think they're going after people coming right out of high school. Because I saw the recruitment in the 80s that they were doing at Howard. And, you know, I mean, and now you see, now they have these community centers. I'm not mad at anybody. I'm just wondering why the Democrats don't do that. They have community centers all in the inner city. And they're targeting Latinos, they're targeting Black people, and they're saying, come into the party, we will work with you. Now you have more Black people running under the Republican banner than, please, maybe since the post-Lincoln period, right? What are Democrats going to do?
And they play our groups, they play our factions against one another.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's so easy to pit African Americans against African Americans, Black women against Black men, vice versa, Hispanics against Black. And they have unlimited access to money. I mean, we have to get back to the activism that your dad was involved in through the churches, through community groups. It's challenging, it's difficult, but we got to train our own soldiers and without the resources. But when people fall in love with the dollar, it's difficult. It's a challenge, but we have no choice.
We're talking with Texas Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis about the importance of voting down ballot, if you will. Voting is your bailiwick, Attorney Darrell Jones. You've heard what this elected official is dealing with and what he sees on the ground, what he's seen from really, he's had a 30,000-foot view because he's a leader nationally. He's a leader in the state. He's a leader in the county. He's a leader in his city. It is so important to vote. To run people for office who have no money. We need to get behind them, but we've got to be engaged at every level in order to, because that is what Ahmaud Arbery's parents did. Didn't they go after the prosecutor?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right, Santita. In the Arbery case in Brunswick, Georgia, they went after the prosecutor who was up for re-election. And that was at a period where the filing for anyone to run against or for the office of the state prosecutor there had passed. So they actually had to do a signature petition to get another name on the ballot to run against this corrupt prosecutor, Jacqueline Johnson, who was there. And after, acquiring the number of signatures, they then got in the streets to get the community together and to vote her out of office. But this is what street level politics is about, and that's what we need. Santita, you could not have a better person talking about this than Commissioner Harris, because in the state of Texas, when you start looking at Houston and the fact that Houston just did overwhelmingly creative things to get their Black population out to vote, and I believe they called it it was like a motor voter or something like that, where they had people pulling up in cars and being able to register register and cast their ballots, then to have the state come in, the state representatives come in, the legislature come in and say, nah, y'all can't do this. Y'all registering and voting too much. We're going to stop you. We're going to make it illegal. Okay, this is what we're talking about when we're talking about, getting into the streets and being able to get registered and your vote being cast and the importance of that vote. That's a complete representation of that. And there's one other piece I wanted to lift up, Santita, because there's a quiet story that folks are just becoming acquainted with in New Bern, Alabama, where it's 58% black population there. Well, in New Bern, Alabama, they elected their first black mayor. Well, what happened? The white members of the city council instituted and instigated and initiated a court claim against this election. And this was in like 2020, 2021 that the person was elected. They have not spent one day as mayor in New Bern, although being duly elected, because they were stopped by the county commissioners that are there. This is why we say it's important to be certain that you vote down ballot, that you have the commissioners that represent your interests, the mayors that represent your interests, the judges that represent your interests. Nothing could be lifted up higher than New Bern, Alabama, and what the state legislature did and in Houston, Texas, to the Houston's autonomy and determining how best to get their constituents to be able to vote.
Commissioner Ellis, how does that happen? How do you get elected and then you get blocked
when they
doing
have the
your job?
power? When they have the power to use it, he was talking about drive-through voting. So here we are in a pandemic. It's a fairly novel concept, and we use federal money to do it, by the way. You could use some of the money from the pandemic, and we couldn't think of anything more important than making it easy. People didn't want to go out. Remember, you start ordering your groceries online, picking up. So we decided we do drive-through voting, 24-hour voting on one day. Everything to make it possible. They had the votes in the legislature. No shame. Decided that we merged the office of the clerk. We had one office registering people, another office handling elections. It went back to the poll tax. Since you paid your poll tax and tax assessor in Texas, they decided, let's just have the tax assessor be the one that handles voter registration. Highly inefficient. So we decided to put that in one office, create a professional team, so all year around you focus on handling the elections and registering to vote. They passed a bill saying only one county in the state, 254 counties, only Harris County could not have an elections administrator. He has to divide those two functions again. Then passed another bill saying that if the state sees any concerns with the way the elections are being handled, the state governor appoints the Secretary of State. That person can swoop in, put those two people out of office, have to be two black women, put them out of office if they're not happy with what they're doing in terms of registration and handling elections, and then the state take over the system. You have no Voting Rights Act. We have no federal protection on it. We in court challenging one bill saying you can't just go pass a law targeted at one county. And we'll see what happens. And it goes to the Texas District Court, then the Appellate Court, and then the Texas Supreme Court. So we'll see what happens. Great brief, but no, it's look, this is really going back to the 50s, 140s. It's like, it's just like rewriting history. All of those struggles that Reverend Jackson, Dr. King, and others went through, we are back in that position.
And they told us we would end up
our
back
democracy
there.
is fragile.
Yeah.
Yeah, our democracy is fragile. Nobody says that this system has to continue. The courts are important because, people they don't have a law enforcement, they don't have an army, a police force to enforce their decisions. You have to have confidence in them. And these changes in what happens, the United States Supreme Court come in overnight, take away a woman's right to decide what to do with her body. These swift changes give people a lack of confidence in the judiciary. And that has been the big difference in this country. All our rights were gained gradually. It took a long time to go from Plessy versus Ferguson to Sweat versus Painter, to Brown versus the Board. It took a long time to reverse those Supreme Court rulings. And now overnight, you're seeing so many rights just eroding. 1 week, an article you sent me, women are at clinics making decisions about their bodies and the state Supreme Court flips on a dime, changes a decision in Iowa, and they are in the clinic, and people say, "Stop! We can't do that procedure." It's scary.
Reverend Dr. Uri, you've been awfully quiet.
I've been letting Commissioner Ellis hold class. It's teaching. The down ballot responsibility is closest to what affects us on a day-to-day basis, right? When we talk about what can my faith colleagues, my religious leaders do, is start having conversations with your council person. Start having conversations with who represents you in the state Senate, because they rely more heavily on the turnout from your congregation than you would probably see at other levels. And it gives you more influence to make sure that your voices are heard, your representative voices on behalf of your congregation and your community, to make sure that they have the support they need to go back and create the kind of agenda that impacts your life. That's why you have a Rodney Ellis there. He knows the state system. He knows the local system. He knows the process by which public funds are used. We've got to make sure they've got the support to be able to do what we need them to do and not just show up once every 4 years.
Rodney Ellis, the last 90 seconds belong to you. Are the Democrats going to do anything nationally about this? Well, we have to do it ourselves. Reverend said you can't wait for these other people to free you. You've got to free yourself.
It'll be all of the above. You know, I'm proud that the vice president has been speaking out so vocally about the foolishness in Texas along the border against Governor DeSantis. But look, it's on all levels. I was at Bishop Dixon, one of Reverend's allies, last night at a meeting where we challenged in our hospital district. They want a $2.5 billion bond issue. We want a community benefits agreement. We want to know what will be in it and have your board vote on it, so after the election, you don't get amnesia. But look, we in for a tough fight. People got to vote in every race. Santita, I love you. The Urban League is in Houston. I'm going to have to run because I'm trying to help them get ready to have folks come in Houston tomorrow in this hot heat and humidity. But I love you, and thank you so much for having me. Todd Uri, Attorney Jones, good to hear your voices.
Thank you for making the time. We love Texas-Harris County Commissioner Ellis. We have got a New York Times best-selling author. It's okay to be mad about capitalism. John Nichols, national correspondent for The Nation magazine, coming up. He's going to talk about what's happening with Israel. Pramila Jayapal, she was critical of Israel, and she's come under a lot of fire for things that people say. I'd say people who are critics say at home there. And then what's going on with the SAG strike, SAG-AFTRA? If it's not over soon, with the actors not working and the writers not writing, what are we going to do? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Do you all want to stay on with John Nichols? You're more than welcome to.
Listen, unfortunately, I'm going to have to run the court. And, you know, I love listening to John and conversing with him. He's just so incredible. But, you know, and I'm going to be trying to listen in because I want to hear what he's going to be saying about Israel. But you know, Santita, one of the things that Commissioner Ellis have brought up, and I want to be certain that everyone's aware of, what's happening in Texas isn't limited to Texas. You know, North Carolina with the court system has done the same thing and electing these state judges that end up restricting and reversing what happens in North Carolina. It happens in Florida. I mean, it's just all over the place that we're seeing the strategy that's being employed.
Mr. Nichols is on.
That we get out there and vote down ballot because they're showing.
And Jules still on hold.
Of the Supreme Courts in the states as well as the local election boards.
Well, you know what? Look, we will be listening out for you at 11 o'clock Central Standard Time, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. You and Attorney Barbara Argwan, please give her our love. Can't wait to get her back on. You know, I know you guys are busy. You go get him in court.
Looking forward to it.
Go get him in court. John Nichols, how are you?
I am well. How are you?
I am doing great. I think we've got Reverend Dr. Todd Uri with us still. Reverend Dr. Uri? Is Reverend, or did he leave? He might have.
Well, I'm about to leave now. I wanted to say, hey, John, good to hear your voice. I'll be listening.
It's great to hear your voice, Reverend.
Thank you. It's Tuesday, so you know lawyers when you play lawyer on TV, you got to show up every now and then. So I'm on my way to court.
Sending you so much love.
Thank you. Have a great day.
God bless you. John, both of your articles were so fascinating. I figured, given that Israel is just so prominent in the news right now, and given what's happening in the United States with the Alabama challenge to the U.S. Supreme Court, essentially that's what's happening there. I'd like for you to kind of explain what we're looking at. Oh boy, these governments, they're so fragile. They're so strong, and yet they're so fragile. They're so fragile. But to talk about, I thought your article was fantastic.
And I will follow.
Okay, well,
you lead and I will follow.
And then, of course, I'm not going to see Barbie today. I'm going to see Oppenheimer. Yeah, I'm going to see and Sound of Freedom. I want to see
there
that.
Are people. Oh, there's a lot of good things to see. I will tell you that there are people who are doing double features.
Yeah.
Dixon, Oppenheimer, and Barbie, which strikes me as perhaps a little dissonant, but probably wise to see Oppenheimer first, then Barbie second.
Well,
I think that's probably the way.
I want to see Sound of Freedom. I really, really do, because sex trafficking is a very, very big issue for children, and Chicago is really the top spot for it. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know.
Absolutely. And it's a real problem in the Black community. Thank you so much, Alex. So many of our children go missing, and they're not even looked for. And, the whispers in the community are that they are being trafficked, walking to school, sitting at home, getting snatched. It's happening all over the place. And
my goodness.
Oh, yeah. And in fact, Pastor Muncie out of Indiana, he has one of the 20 largest churches in the United States. He and his wife have dedicated part of their ministry to dealing with that. So I want to see how they handle that. But we will see. We'll see. But I'm going to. Oh boy, Pramila Jayapal. But this is like the third rail of American politics. We know.
10 seconds.
Stand by, but but it's okay.
Well, the Reverend had his
stand by
in this regard.
Oh yeah, well, when
we can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
And hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey everybody, you know what time it is. It is time to talk with John Nichols, New York Times bestselling author. It's okay to be mad about capitalism. He and Bernie Sanders have written the stemwinder of a book. Do you know what I forgot to do when you were here a couple of weeks ago? Bring you my book you could autograph it. I was like, what was I thinking? Don't worry, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get my autograph.
Well, we will have many opportunities.
Well, like I said, I want my book autographed. I want it autographed. But you've written two brilliant pieces. Of course, we're in the midst of the SAG-AFTRA strike. The actors and the writers are on strike, and they're the worker bees. Even though we look at these superstar actors and these showrunners who make a lot of money, most actors, most showrunners, most writers don't make exorbitant sums, and they're able to get their health insurance and on and on and on through the unions. Thank heavens for that. But they're on strike, and they're in this as we have artificial intelligence, as we have so many different, as we see this advent look, for example, they want actors to go into a booth, John, and get scanned, and then you scan my voice. You pay me $182, one and done, and then I look up and see myself acting out a whole film, and you don't pay me for it. For example, a Himpler. I mean, what is that about? Before we talk about what's happening in Israel, I think we need to look at that, and we need to look at this great, brave progressive, Pramila Jayapal, who's come under a fusillade of criticism because of things, because of her. I mean, look, you can be, in fact, I only think friends give you critique, loving critique. They tell you, hey, you're out of order here. And that's something we got to look at. So wherever you want to begin, you can, as we talk about Barbie.
Well, I think I think a good place to begin is in the broad sense to say that this is the summer of strikes. And we are seeing major strikes in major industries of a sort that we haven't seen in a very long time. In fact, not that many years ago, we used to see commentators and pundits say, well, the era of the labor union is gone. The era of strikes is gone. We won't see them anymore. That we'd entered into some sort of new period in our economy. Well, that was always foolish. The fact of the matter was the unions were quite beaten down for a long time, and they were in a tough place. But they have strengthened, and in part it's because young people, especially, are very passionate about trade unionism, and that has built and strengthened unions in many sectors. But after COVID, when we had so many people sacrifice so much, there's a great sense that there's a need for a fairer distribution of the revenues, the profits that have come into all these industries. So we're seeing strikes in the entertainment industry by the writers, as you mentioned, and the writers are the people behind the scenes, the ones who tell the stories and come up with the ideas and play such a vital role. And yet they are threatened by AI because there are people who want to make movies by pressing a button on a machine and having it come up with a story rather than the heart and soul and the vision. And ultimately, that's the problem of AI. The problem of AI is it will never take us to a new and unexpected place. It will simply repeat that which we know, maybe in very sophisticated, very interesting ways. But the notion of pushing forward to some brighter and higher place, that gets lost. And so writers are saying, no, we want to continue to contribute our creativity, to contribute our vision, and at its best, as we see with films like Oppenheimer, to take us to deeper and more complex places. And the actors have joined in striking. They're striking for some of the same reasons, as you mentioned, AI, but also in the world of actors, you have a situation that's really a tough one because most actors are working class. They work very, very hard, but they don't make a lot of money. And they need the protections of the union. They need the pay. They need the health insurance. And much of that is threatened. The studios made unimaginable profits in recent years, just huge, huge amounts of money. Studio executives are paid at levels that we cannot even imagine. And yet they are refusing to give a fair distribution of these profits, of these revenues to the actors. And so actors are on strike. And I would only add that that it's not just the entertainment industry. We have workers in breweries and small factories and other facilities across this country on strike in all sorts of unions. And on the last day of this month, if UPS does not reach an agreement with the Teamsters Union, the Teamsters will launch the largest strike in modern American history. And that Teamsters strike will take hundreds and hundreds of thousands of UPS drivers and workers onto the streets, on picket lines. And as they say, it won't be them that caused the strike. It will be UPS that caused the strike by refusing to give even a small portion of its excess profits to the workers who made those profits possible. And remember, through the pandemic, it was UPS drivers that were coming to your door and delivering things when other routes were unavailable. And so the UPS strike is a huge deal.
John, they
and
don't
when we
even
put
have,
all these things together.
They don't even have air conditioners in their trucks. I mean, come on now.
No, they just open the two sides, right? And the guys are wearing their shorts and they run out the door. And you know, they also have they've been fighting against a two-tier system in that in the UPS sector because the company for years has tried to create a situation where older drivers and older workers get paid at frankly a very good rate, but that younger drivers and younger workers do not. And it's really a great show of solidarity because the older drivers are saying, yeah, we've got a pretty good deal here, but we don't want to be unfair to those who are coming up, to that next generation. And so they're working to get rid of the
second caller.
They're working to assure that everybody gets fair pay, fair benefits, and frankly, fair hours, because UPS is such a demanding, being a UPS driver, being a UPS worker is so demanding. And so this is a big deal strike by a multiracial, multi-ethnic union that touches every part of America. So the reason I go through that relatively lengthy description is to say that there's a very real possibility by the first week in August, just days away, we may be in one of the most dramatic strike situations in modern history. And it is incredibly important to show solidarity, to be there with all of those who are striking.
Because I can't help but I heard something, just out the corner of my ear, if you will, this morning when they were talking about how in the short term the strike would impact us, that other companies would have to step into the gap and they would raise their prices. And I said, I'm wondering if these other companies might, if corporate America might be in on this. I'm always thinking now, because they can jack up their prices and keep them elevated once the strike has been resolved. Just saying, just thinking. But let me bring in. Yes, because I've got callers who want to speak with you. But no,
be always conscious of that, and of the profiteering, and frankly, of the of the ugly situation where management, corporate interests try to pit workers against one another, make us think that one sector we shouldn't care about, maybe another, blah, blah, blah. Bottom line is that wonderful word solidarity, that's our touchstone. If we back all of these unions and really put it all together, we have a remarkable opening here to raise wages, not just for union members, but for non-union folks, because frankly, as we raise the standard within industries, it helps everyone.
Let me go to Ted. Ted, what's on your mind, hon? Thank you for calling this morning.
Hey. Yeah, good morning, Santita. Thanks a lot. Sorry, I couldn't more strongly disagree. I think you guys need to be spending your lip service talking about the great things that President Biden has done. I can't believe all the lip service given to this fantasy industry of movies and television. Overspent, long-winded, made up fictional stories by people with their minds, not interested at all. Let's get down to the real things nowadays. That industry, I can't believe all the publicity that industry is getting. It's all fantasy. It's all fantasy.
No,
we have more
actually,
important things.
but Ted, I have to disagree. If you look at PBS, I mean, you have a lot of writers. I mean, you have a lot of people. Everybody matters. I don't think that you are doing this, but I think we have to be very careful not to diminish the work that anybody does. Sometimes, no, I'm just saying, I don't think that you're being, I don't think you're intentionally being unkind or cruel or insensitive. But I think that whenever workers,
I just want to emphasize how unimportant it is compared to the other things.
I don't know. I mean, and I don't know. I say that as an artist, as someone. Well, I'm only saying to you.
I'm an artist too, and I made it on my own. I'm a great artist.
Yeah, but
I never looked for this.
Yeah, but nobody really makes it on their own. You need an audience, right?
Santita, I did.
Well, I mean, who listens to you, right? I mean, we all need somebody. We all do. But stay right there. I want John to
Very limited. Very limited.
Well, I know. I think we all need somebody, but I respectfully disagree with you. But I'm glad that you've called in. But stay right here because I want John to speak to what you said. John?
Well, look, I respect folks who, try to make a distinction and say, look, there are some folks who are in desperate need. There are other folks who are in different situations. But what we have found throughout history is that when you divide up workers and say, well, some are worthy of our support and solidarity and some are not, we end up in a situation where power prevails, right? Because if we are divided, if we don't have a united commitment to help workers in every industry, then we ultimately put ourselves in a situation where those with economic power, those with political power in many situations will tell us, oh, well, as it turns out, you shouldn't care about these workers. You shouldn't care about those workers. Ultimately, we don't care about any workers. And so my sentiment on this is that, as I said in our discussion a moment ago, we will very possibly, in the next matter of few days, see people who work in industries that are very physical, right? You know, the physical labor of a UPS driver running to the door to deliver things, especially during the pandemic. People who work in industries that are very technical, brewery workers at Leinenkugel up in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, out on strike, Teamsters as well right now. The work of people who are creative. And remember that many of the people who are striking in the SAG-AFTRA strike are folks who make documentaries and folks who work in information settings, not just in entertainment or in classic entertainment. And then actors and actresses. And boy, I will tell you, if you have ever watched a production, of a film or of a documentary, and I've been in a lot of them, the people who do that work incredibly hard. I mean, this is not easy work. And yes, sometimes they may lighten our burdens. They may, lift a little bit of our frustration with some entertainment. But other times they inform us and guide us to, much higher levels of thinking and much better ways of approaching stuff. So I'm in the camp that says that we practice solidarity with those who are on strike. When someone's on strike, we don't cross the picket line. And also, you keep an eye on all the sorts of picket lines that may exist. And that means that if UPS drivers are on strike, maybe you don't, shift your business.
A new caller.
To FedEx, as an example, immediately. But you look for another union company. And if there's not a union company and not union drivers, maybe you just don't make that order for a little bit and show some solidarity with those who are on strike. Never easy. Look, these can be very difficult and challenging moments. But at the end of the day, corporate power has grown so great in America.
Oh my gosh.
It is so overwhelming that if worker power is not united and determined, then corporate power will prevail. And trust me, if we don't come out of this summer with stronger unions, better contracts, better circumstances for workers in all industries, then we'll be, the fall and the winter will see us backtracking, and it won't be good. So this is the summer strikes, and it's a time to be supportive and enthusiastic about what workers are finally doing and being able to do because they've got unions that are ready to stand up.
Well, let me get a couple callers in. Jewel has been holding for a minute, our sister from New York. Jewel, what's on your mind, sweetie?
Good morning, Santita. Hi. I just wanted to say how much Can you hear me?
Yes, sweetie. Just sending you much love.
Yes, I just want to make sure that I say that I heard that statement the other day that when Africans were going to slavery and coming here, that it was some sort of a getting training and there were no benefits. There were no benefits. That's like an insult to injury. And the main discussion, that seems like a diversion from reparations. What do you think?
We're going to continue to talk about that because Africans were brought to the United States because we are highly skilled as agriculturalists and as inventors. I mean, please, mathematics was created in Africa. I mean, there was a reason they brought us here because we were not lazy, because we would work under very, very difficult conditions. And so, John, I think she makes the point. I mean, it wasn't me. It wasn't a stab in the heart. I said, how ignorant of you. And this is so mean-spirited. I mean, because my self-esteem, I'm pretty good. I already know what our contributions have been. I'm very clear on the narrative that immigrants built the country. Of course we need immigrants, but the people who built the country are Africans. We built it on the stolen land of indigenous people, and we were not paid for the work. The Staple Singers have a song, John, that I heard when I was a little girl in Ghana when they were performing it. When will we be paid for the work we've done? Mavis sang that song that night. And I got to say, wait a minute. This country was built. If you go to the Capitol, go to Washington, D.C., all those buildings were built by enslaved laborers.
That's right.
We have to get our language right, John.
Yeah. But we have to get our language right and our history right. And we're in the period of a great battle for history right now. It is a battle. And we shouldn't be surprised by this. This is, we used to criticize the Soviet Union for this. We used to say, oh, they rewrite their history. when somebody new comes to power or when somebody new is positioning for power. We should be very, very clear that history is often a battleground. And it's often said those who have the dominant position, those who win the fight, get to write the history. And there's some truth to that. But one of the great things about recent decades has been that we have seen a deeper history, and courageous, wonderful historians have started to tell the full story of what's happened in the history of this country. That doesn't make America weaker. That doesn't make America less. It actually gives us a sense of what is incredible about this country, what is amazing about this country, and that is that people who were enslaved, people who were beaten and tortured and lynched, rose from that oppression, that horrible oppression, and demanded rights, and have gotten many rights. Not all that they should, but have advanced politically, economically, and that's not something that we ought to talk around or diminish or neglect. That is a story of persistence and of immense courage and immense determination, and I think that we have to understand that those who seek to rewrite the history in order to diminish the accomplishments and diminish the contribution of Black Africans and of other folks who were enslaved throughout history, those who do that are doing it because they want to maintain this power. They want to maintain that which this country at its best has struggled against. And so this is a critical turning. This is a critical moment. We have to win these battles for history. This is not a small measure.
Why do we have to win these battles for history? Why?
Because if we don't, then the generations to come will be taught a lie. They will be taught a lie, much as the caller mentions in particular issues there. But the lie will grow. I promise you, the lie will grow, and it will be a lie defined by wealth and power, with the goal of making sure that those who are not wealthy and powerful accept a lesser existence, right? Accept a circumstance where they see themselves as, not a full part of this history of America, not a full part of this story. A real story, a real history is going to have highs and lows. It's going to have pain and sorrow, but it's also going to have joy and hope. And we do ourselves a great disservice if we don't tell that full history. And that's, look, in my books, there's a lot of history. I write a lot of history because it's important to understand that in the distant past, there were people who knew the right way to go, right? Even if the vast majority of folks at the founding of this country accepted a 3/5 compromise that basically ensured that slavery would go forward for another 60 some years. Even if the vast majority of the founders did accept that, there were founders who rejected it. There were the Quakers of the late 18th and early 19th century. There were people like Tom Paine, author of Common Sense, one of the founding documents of the American experiment, who said that the enslavement of people must end, and also who talked about the rights of women. And so we tell this story because I think it gives people courage in this time, right? If you know that there were those who stood on their own, who stood, often in a minority, often rejected, but who stood and did the right thing in the past, it gives people courage to do the right thing in the present.
So what is our takeaway as we look at these strikes? I want you to come back and talk about Pramila Jayapal and what's happening in Israel with the courts and with the criticisms, because more and more people are being critical. Some people are being critical for cruel reasons, but others are critical because they're like you, they're like me, they love this country, and they know that when people tell me that I can't criticize America, When they tell me love it or leave it, no, first of all, no, because I've been here for hundreds of years. No, this is my home. And my mother, before I leave her, and John, you've known her more than 40 years, wait a minute, soup to nuts. Before this 24-hour period is over, when I've seen her, she's going to call me and tell me something that I need to do better.
That's right.
There's something that there was a pause I didn't take in a sentence. I like it better when your hair is like this, or I think your thinking is off here. I mean, that's what happens. That's what, when you love somebody, you want to tweak them so they can get right. So, but what about, but Ted has a position that some people have, that this is fantasy, this is not important. I'm like, no, I think this writers and actors strike is very important.
Yeah, I think it's vital. And again, I don't think we separate these strikes of this summer. There are brewery workers on strike. There are warehouse workers on strike. There are UPS drivers who may soon be on strike. There are actors who are on strike. There are writers who are on strike. If we recognize all these people are striking for a reason, that we just went through a pandemic and we were asked to contribute, immense amounts in shared sacrifice, now it is time for those with corporate power, those who reap the immense profits, to share some of those profits back. They need to sacrifice. Frontline workers sacrificed already. Now it's time to have a fair distribution of the resources and the profits that came out of that pandemic. That's all that these striking folks are saying. And then one other thing that they add, and that is they'd like to have a future where we see economic and social and racial justice. That's what these strikes are telling us. And it's a pretty good message. It's one we ought to stand in solidarity with.
Amen to that. Workers matter, everybody, and we're all workers. The majority of the world, the overwhelming majority of us are workers. We deserve protection. We deserve to be respected, never neglected. We are somebody. I'm Santita Jackson. John Nichols, everybody, get the book. It's okay to be mad about capitalism. It's okay. I love you, John Nichols. I'm Santita Jackson. Thank you, Alex, for a great show. Everybody, have a great day. God bless you. See you tomorrow. John, let me know when you have a little bit more time this week, because I think that what's happening in Israel is very, very important. And I'd like for you to put Congresswoman Jayapal's critique in a broader tableau, if you would, because there's just a lot that's happening. There's a lot that's happening.
There is a great deal that's happening, and I'd be glad to talk about it more. I think that's exactly the right way to talk about it too, which is that we need to put it in perspective. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that was done very well by our media. I think that we tend to gloss over too many of these issues, and these are complex issues that we need to go deep on. And frankly, I give high marks to the people who are in the streets in Israel right now who are fighting for democracy. More power to them as they want their country to be much better than it is at this point, and want to defend that which is good and that which is vital. But we should also understand that you can give credit to those who are protesting in Israel. You can also recognize that Palestinians have to be heard, and that they have rights that have been denied. And you should also finally understand that all of this intersects with the United States, because the United States is a global superpower that has been closely aligned with Israel for a very, very long time. And at some points in history has taken up the cause of the Palestinians and shown sympathy for them, but at other points has failed in that regard. And so, again, this is all about history, and this is all about, speaking truth to it. And when we speak truth to it, we do that by understanding deeply that there are things that need to be called out. There are things that need to be said, and part of that is that we care for
your caller's still on. Would you like me to put him through?
Palestinian people, and we care for justice. Simple message, and it's one that can't be lost.
Amen. Would you mind listening to Dave, Dynamo Dave? He wants to make a quick comment before we all before we go.
Yeah.
Dynamo Dave, how you doing, sweetie?
Hey, How you doing? How's the sunshine of Chicago doing?
Oh, you are just my precious Dynamo Dave. You better stop it before you make me jump out of here and marry you right now. But what's your comment very quickly? Because John has to go
I'm
today.
getting married August 19th.
Wait a minute, I should ask you if you are married. Now, ain't that nothing? 'Cause I'm not that girl. What's on your mind, sweetie?
Well, I'm a couple things. Hey, I just want to say, some caller called and I said, I want to say all work is dignified, should be dignified, not denigrated. To the people that are actors and writers, they give us entertainment like the end of a hard work day. And I was thinking, of a progressive idea. What if, like, one nickel every movie ticket, every pay-per-view, every subscription, one nickel went to those unions so they could help support their workers, provide health care and that sort of thing. Same for the delivery UPS drivers. Every package that delivers, one nickel goes back to their union so that they can help support their membership. Can you imagine how much revenue that would just go to for them?
Well, I mean, I think you're making some great points. I do.
Thank you.
I love you, Dynamo Dave. You have a wonderful, dynamic day, Dynamo Dave.
I will, now that you told me to. Hey, congratulations on another successful convention, Rainbow Push Convention, and please thank your father on behalf of all people who've benefited from his leadership. He's been an inspiration to me, and congratulations on contributing out of the current role of the role you had for many years. And my prayers for you and.
Oh, thank you. And John and I both thank you for congratulating us on the convention, because John is one of the founders of the Rainbow. Just so you know.
Oh, really?
Give myself that much credit.
Well, you are.
I was around.
No, you
I
were
was
not.
around.
He was not around. He's one of our original campaign workers from 1983, Dynamo Dave. And so credit belongs where it is due. And so that's it. And so, and we've been together for 4 decades.
Wow, that's impressive. Way to go. Congratulations to you, my friend. That's the thing is, unfortunately, a lot of times, you get a charismatic leader like your father, and everybody thinks it's all him. And sure enough, he did do a lot, but there's so many people behind the scenes helping to support and getting together and doing all that organizing. That's a big, it's to be commended. Everybody who's been along for that whole 40-some years, 40-year anniversary.
Well, thank you, Dynamo Dave.
And a nice big apple pie.
Love it. Thank you, precious. Thank you so much. I'm sending you much, much, much love. You be careful today and have a wonderful day, and make sure you stay hydrated and cool and indoors.
Very well. We'll do, and you as well.
All right,
okay.
Sweetie.
Take care, my friend.
Oh, my dear friend. Love you so much. Of course. Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to say, John, before we go? I'm going to reach back out to you a little bit later on today to see when you have time to talk about what's happening in Israel.
Yeah, I understand. And I think that's a good note on which to say, as always, this has been a great discussion. We had a real chance to talk about striking workers who are having a difficult time. And I love the call. I love callers who challenge us and raise issues different ways and let us come back and offer our views and sort of the wonder of live radio. It's a really, really positive thing, and you maintain it very well, as I've said to you before. But at this point, I've got to run. You've got to run.
Love, yes.
Send you love.
I'm sending you so much love, John. Sending you so much love, and I'll speak with you before the week is out. Absolutely. God bless. Everybody, I love you. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow, God willing, on the Santita Jackson Show. God bless.